where Colin was wrong.
Boy, that Jalen Hurts story last week, Jeremy Fowler, I mean, I love his maturity, his IQ, his EQ, but the rigidity, his reluctance to sort of embrace new offenses was kind of an eye-opener. I was told last August he wasn't loved in the locker room, but that's not the be-all, end-all. Not every quarterback is beloved. Leadership sometimes is difficult. But it made it sound like A.J. Brown was not the issue in the locker room. It may be Jalen Hurts. And so that caught me off guard.
This situation has genuinely become an absolute farce. I'm talking, of course, about the never-ending discourse surrounding Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. And honestly, I'm kind of pumped to dive even deeper into it. Sure, we've already covered this ground plenty of times, but surprise, surprise, there's still more fuel for the fire. That recent article was so ridiculous and full of contradictions. On one hand, it claims Jalen Hurts is uncoachable, hard to work with, not fully committed, and so on and so forth. Then, in the very same piece, it states that Hurts thrives under strong coaching, with instructors who keep him responsible and constantly challenge him to improve. And you're just sitting there thinking, hold on a second. You literally just said he isn't coachable, doesn't collaborate well with coaches, and isn't always bought into the system. But then, when he receives excellent coaching, he does buy in, and they manage to extract the best possible version of him. Like we saw with Kellen Moore and Shane Steichen. It makes you go, huh? Do you realize how little sense that makes? The entire conversation, and I'll be putting out another video on this, posting it tomorrow, is just incoherent. Tomorrow is going to be a bit hectic for me personally. My mom is undergoing surgery, so I genuinely don't know how the day will play out. That's why I want to record a few videos now and schedule them in advance, because I simply can't predict what tomorrow will bring. So I'll have to wait and see. But there's an Eagles-related video I really want to make, one I'm genuinely excited about, and I think you all will enjoy it. I'll keep that separate from this separate rant. The discussions around Jalen are even more unhinged than we currently realize or are willing to acknowledge. It's absolutely insane. Why? Because we take certain flaws that Jalen has, certain weaknesses, and we act as if they define him entirely. This is exactly what I was pointing out all last season. Every time Jalen turns the ball over, every time he misses a throw, the immediate reaction is, see? He's fundamentally not a good quarterback. He's the problem. Meanwhile, I watch Patrick Mahomes miss throws. I see Josh Allen miss throws. Lamar Jackson misses throws. Matthew Stafford misses throws. It happens again and again and again. Yet nobody uses those moments as proof that those quarterbacks aren't good enough. But with Jalen, every single issue is treated like a core, existential flaw, something that threatens his very survival as an NFL quarterback. Consider Matthew Stafford. When he won his Super Bowl, he threw something like 17 interceptions. Sam Darnold turned the ball over a ton last season too, and he won the Super Bowl, right? I mean, I've watched Patrick Mahomes make terrible throws and awful decisions. I've seen Lamar, Joe Burrow takes way too many sacks. Drake May couldn't stop getting sacked last season. And how well did he play in the FFS? Yet nobody cites any of that as evidence that he's not good enough. But with Jalen Hurts, we attack his character. We hear that he's not beloved in the locker room, this or that. What do we usually hear? Endless stories about how everyone adores Joe Burrow, how they love Lamar Jackson, how they'd run through walls for those guys. I'm not hearing any of that right now about Jalen. No constant stream of positive anecdotes. Nothing like that. And yet, is there a whole hit piece about him now? No. Think about the Lamar Jackson narrative. Someone once told me, you say everything about Jalen Hurts is lies, but with Lamar Jackson, everything reported is true. And it's like, we're hearing these weird, twisted stories about Jalen. With Lamar, it was actually reported that he was literally falling asleep in team meetings. That's a concrete event that someone put on the record. Then the head coach got fired, and the Ravens have fallen short in the playoffs every single year, often with Lamar not playing his best. I've defended Lamar plenty, but he hasn't elevated his game in the biggest moments. That's just a fact. And I've said the Ravens share part of the blame. But regardless, he hasn't been good enough. And again, there are reports that he's literally dozing off during meetings. That's not the kind of conversation they're having about Jalen Hurts. With him, it's he's unlikable, he's uncoachable, all these subjective, opinion-based accusations. Meanwhile, the Lamar stuff is reporting on actual events. And yet Lamar Jackson is a multi-time MVP. He's viewed as an all-time great, a once-in-a-generation talent. And are we having endless, exhausting conversations about Lamar Jackson? No. We're having those endless conversations about Jalen Hurts, the quarterback who has actually won a Super Bowl and led his team to 2 Super Bowls. And you want to say, well, the team around him is so great. Fine. Every team that makes it to the Super Bowl is great. Are we going to pretend the Seattle Seahawks didn't have an elite defense? That Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't just become the highest-paid wide receiver in history? That Clint Kubiak didn't just become a head coach? That Mike McDonald isn't seen as the defensive version of Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan? Are we just going to ignore all that? Are we going to pretend the Rams aren't stacked on both sides of the ball? Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, hypothetically in the original context, elite O-line, Sean McVay. We're just going to pretend none of that exists? I've got news for you. Teams that win the Super Bowl, teams that reach the Super Bowl, they're awesome, okay? They have great coaching, great defenses, great offenses, great running games. They know how to win games. So again, you only want to hold that against Jalen Hurts. It's just stupid at this point. It doesn't add up. It makes zero sense. None. Zero. And now this idea that Jalen Hurts isn't liked. This is where I get really fired up, because Sumio. And he said, oh, it's like Russell Wilson all over again. And I responded, nobody came to Russell Wilson's defense. And now we have players from all over defending Russ. I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the guy who's almost too honest, who says whatever comes to mind. By the way, he was part of that defense that dominated the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And we had this discussion recently about the whole let Russ cook drama, the defense getting upset, etc. That's not what happened with the Eagles. And now C.J. Gardner-Johnson, probably the most outspoken and honest person in the locker room, the one you'd expect to say, yeah, the defense won that Super Bowl, not Jalen, what is he doing? He's out there defending Jalen Hurts. He's saying, just know that the bond between me and J1 is unbreakable. Unbreakable. And he goes on and on. Why? People will continue to bash this man for what reason? There's plenty of other quarterback news we could talk about. Because former Bucs linebacker Levante David said Jalen Hurts was never asked to do much in the Eagles' passing game. And it's like, oh yeah, they hate to see you win for real. They thought it was about uplifting the community, not tearing it down. It's just crazy. 7 different offensive systems. 7. And he still made it back and won one. That's rare. Yeah, it's true. And let's not forget Tom Brady saved the Bucs. We all know that. I told you guys that wasn't a Bucs Super Bowl, that was a Tom Brady sup. Bowl. And even Tom Brady needed Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and a defense that also shut down Patrick Mahomes. Was it the Bucs or was it Tom Brady? Exactly. You've got Tank Bigsby out there defending Jalen Hurts. You've got Marquise Hollywood Brown defending him after a touchdown pass. You've got the entire offensive line lifting him up, saying, I love when they doubt you. This team has literally stood behind Jalen Hurts. But because A.J. Brown was unhappy, that suddenly means everything is broken? Or that Jalen didn't trust Kellen Moore? Wait. Let me get this straight. There are reports that Jalen changed the plays too much at the line of scrimmage. So let me understand, the quarterback who has had a million coaches throughout his career, who has dealt with different systems year after year after year, and who just won the Super Bowl last year, 2024, Super Bowl MVP, all of that, he now has a coordinator he doesn't trust, someone he's uncomfortable with. And we automatically want to say that's a Jalen Hurts problem, rather than saying, hey, maybe Jalen is actually correct here. Maybe he shouldn't trust Kellen Moore. Other quarterbacks change plays all the time, right? Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, we know this. We know those guys do this stuff constantly. But now it's supposedly bad for Jalen Hurts to do it with a first-time offensive coordinator, a first-time play caller. And Jalen is essentially saying, I don't like what you're doing. I'm not comfortable. Blee here. And we want to label that as a Jalen Hurts problem. And this past season, the Eagles' offense was an absolute mess. Yet Jalen Hurts was still statistically a top quarterback in the NFL. He won the division. They won 11 games, and that's without a good start. They would have beaten the Commanders if Jalen had been playing. I know Tanner McKee didn't get it done. They would have won 11 or 12 games. Could have won 13. Heck, maybe 14. A few of those close one-score games didn't go their way. Frankly, they should have won them. And yet Jalen Hurts gets more hate and more attacks. And here's what's so funny about all this, we're having all these conversations about Jalen and his problems. Let's talk about everyone's favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. He had CeeDee Lamb, he had Brandon Cooks, or similar. That team had an awesome offense, a great running game, a great O-line. They had all the pieces. Meanwhile, the Eagles this past season had a bad play caller, a bad coordinator. Half the O-line was going overseas for medical treatment. Lane Johnson is like 74 years old, hyperbolically. That O-line was clearly not good. They were dealing with disgruntled receivers, blah blah blah. And yet Jalen still got this team to the playoffs. He still did enough. The offense was literally non-existent for entire halves, and by the way, that's not Jalen's fault. It's absurd to think that's a Jalen Hurts problem. It's just absurd. But let's now look at the quarterback who had all the advantages. People want to say, well, his defense wasn't good enough. Let's talk about that. With Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, folks want to act like, oh, Dak did everything. He had to put up all those points against teams like the Panthers and the Packers, and they still didn't win. So what more do you want him to do? Let's examine a 5-game stretch where he played the Chicago Bears, the Denver Broncos, the Arizona Cardinals, the Detroit Lions, and the Minnesota Vikings. What did old Dak Prescott do? 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And keep in mind, a couple of those touchdowns were in garbage time, when they were already getting blown out, the game already decided. So realistically, we could say maybe 3 touchdowns. I'll give him one of them, but definitely at least one of those was meaningless. I was live streaming and said, see, this is how Dak gets a touchdown. And then people say, look, he scored a touchdown, he actually played well, and we all know he didn't. I remember live streaming that game. But again, in some of those games, it was 0 touchdowns and multiple interceptions. So 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 55.4 passer rating, 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I got it wrong. I was reading Patrick Mahomes' numbers. Mahomes also had a bad stretch, but it was 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. It could easily have been 2 touchdowns. So it's even worse. And a passer rat. ING of 76. Geez, man. Patrick Mahomes had a passer rating of 66.9 during one stretch. I don't know who he played, but it wasn't good for him either. But a 76 rating, 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions? My goodness gracious. Just awful. And that was against the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, well, the Denver Broncos, I don't know. I saw what Trevor Lawrence did against the Broncos. Heck, I saw what Jordan Love did against the Broncos. I saw better quarterback play. I saw what Jalen Hurts did against Denver. I saw all those other teams look way more competent. So why are we having endless deep dive conversations about Dak Prescott? The guy hasn't even won multiple playoff games in a single run. Jalen Hurts has been to the same number of Super Bowls as Dak Prescott has playoff wins. Why are we digging deep into that conversation right now? Why are there more conversations about hating on Jalen Hurts this year than there were praising him and the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl? Why are we talking about Sam Darnold after he just won the Super Bowl? Why are we talking about Drake May? What is it? Why aren't we asking if the Cowboys are in trouble with Dak Prescott? Because year after year after year, he's shown he can't get it done. Why isn't there a major deep dive conversation about that? Why isn't there an article with 75 anonymous sources saying, man, Dak just can't get it done? I don't understand where those conversations are. It's just bizarre. You see that, right? You can doubt Jalen Hurts. You can think he isn't some unbelievably great quarterback. That's fine. Truly, that's fine. But the conversations themselves are insane. You understand that, right? You understand the sheer volume of it is insane. We recognize that. I certainly hope so. And again, I'm sensitive to this. I'm hyper aware of it all because when I make Eagles videos, when I make Hurts videos, people ask, why are you talking about Jalen? Why are you talking about the Eagles? And it's like, because they're talked about nonstop. You want me not to talk about them? I have whole videos breaking down those comments where people complain that I'm making Eagles content. They're the most discussed team in the league. What do you want from me? You want me to ignore what everyone else is talking about? That doesn't make sense. What do you want from me? So we continue to see evidence of this, again and again and again. And it's pretty ridiculous. Go do a deep dive into the Cincinnati Bengals and the discomfort around whether Joe Burrow will ever stay healthy for a full season. Go do a deep dive on Patrick Mahomes supposedly declining for the last 3 seasons, yeah, but he got to a Super Bowl and won one. So did Jalen Hurts. What is wrong with you people at this point? Go do a deep dive into the turmoil of firing Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. Go do a deep dive on Lamar Jackson falling asleep in meetings and the Ravens firing John Harbaugh, their Super Bowl winning coach. Go do a deep dive on the Minnesota Vikings moving on from Sam Darnold, only for Darnold to go win a Super Bowl elsewhere. Go do a deep dive on the Dallas Cowboys, the most popular team, the team that every year people say, oh, this team looks dangerous. Do you guys remember last season? Apparently, the Cowboys were the most dangerous team in the NFL, they just had to make the playoffs. Oh no, they just had to make the playoffs. If they could only get in, they'd be the team to beat. That was a literal take. This team is the most dangerous in the NFC. Oh, are they a top seed? No, they're not actually in the playoffs. Well, the Eagles need to lose a bunch of games for that to happen. But aren't the Eagles really bad this year? Yeah. And the Cowboys are better than them? Yeah. So then why are the Eagles in the playoffs and winning the division, but the Cowboys aren't? Well, it's a little hard to explain, but sometimes the better team loses games, and sometimes the better quarterback doesn't win games. I know it's weird. Oh, so better coaching, better roster? What's the story? It's too much to explain right now. Just know that the Dallas Cowboys are actually the best Super Bowl winning team to never win a Super Bowl. Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. I was confused for a second, but they did win a bunch of Super Bowls in the 90s, so that matters. That matters. They won all those Super Bowls with Troy Aikman and Hall of Fame players. And ever since then, Hey, haven't even been to an NFC Championship game. But it's okay. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been to a conference championship game. The Cincinnati Bengals made it to a Super Bowl. The Eagles have won multiple Super Bowls. But the Cowboys won Super Bowls back in 1992, I don't even know, man, whatever the years were. They won back in the old days. Back when people read newspapers and magazines, didn't have phones, weren't into AI and social media. Pretty cool. It was a good time. Great time. When we were all living. That's what matters, what you did in the 80s and 90s. Not 2024, not 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. But the team that has actually been successful for the last decade plus, last 20 years, let's be serious, since 2000. And the quarterback who has actually been to multiple Super Bowls, who has actually won a Super Bowl, who is actually a Super Bowl MVP, who has outplayed none other than Patrick Mahomes multiple times, who has beaten Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, taken them all down in the biggest moments, the biggest games. Matthew Stafford as well. We want to say that this quarterback is not only a problem, but we should question his very ability to even be an NFL quarterback. And not only that, we should question his character and who he is as a person. The very quarterback who was benched in a national championship game and yet had an ear-to-ear smile, cheering on his team, and then had to transfer because, wow, surprise, he wants to play and compete. He was the Heisman Trophy runner-up. Then he got drafted in the second round to a team that had a quarterback they'd paid top money at the time. And then Jalen Hurts becomes the starter, gets the team back to the playoffs every single year, gets to a Super Bowl, and puts up one of the greatest performances of all time in a Super Bowl, played better than Patrick Mahomes has ever played in any of his Super Bowls. That's just a statistical fact. Then in 2023, he had a mess of a team, bad defense, bad coordinator, and still got that team to the playoffs. And the wide receiver who was supposedly so unhappy, everyone agrees he was totally fine. Why? Because he had like 200 plus yards and a bunch of touchdowns. Oh, I see. Then in 2024, that quarterback who changes plays excessively led them to being a top offense in the NFL. Yeah, but Saquon Barkley. Well, Jalen Hurts is the one checking into a lot of those runs. Maybe he was smart to do that. Jalen is also running the RPO, deciding, do I throw, do I keep it and run, or do I hand it off to Saquon? And now Saquon has a record-breaking season, and the offense was dominant, directly related to Jalen Hurts making those decisions and operating the offense. And again that year, Jalen had 17, 18, 19 touchdowns, whatever it is. That's Jalen's decision to say, I'm okay with that. I don't need 30 touchdowns. I don't need 5,000 yards. Are you crazy right now? Do you know how amazing that is? Do you understand how amazing that is? We're out here saying Jalen Hurts is making too many decisions on the field and changing plays excessively, etc., etc. And yet he is running the Super Bowl offense in a way that his own stats, his own reputation, are being marginalized. And he still continues to say, I don't care. I'm trying to win football games. And we want to question this man's character and coachability? Do you understand how crazy that is? The Philadelphia Eagles literally scored the most points in conference championship game history, and then both the conference championship game and Super Bowl combined, and had the most points per game in playoff history. So literally a record-breaking offense for the entire playoffs, for just the conference championship game, and for the conference championship and Super Bowl combined. And it could have been even more if they'd needed to score more against the Packers, or if the Rams game hadn't been a blizzard. So it was record-breaking. Literally record-breaking. And then him in the Super Bowl was also record-breaking. And we say he holds them back, or that if they had another quarterback they'd be better? Do you understand how insane that is? So if they had another quarterback, they'd break the record even more? The record would be even higher? Like, they'd win the Super Bowl even more? There's actually another Super Bowl that the real guys don't know about, and an even higher Super Bowl MVP? And oh, if it was another quarterback, they would have broke. And more records than Jalen Hurts broke? I guess, I don't know. I've seen Patrick Mahomes with elite teams, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Andy Reid, etc.